One night in 1949, two of the most famous faces in America were surrounded by armed police after turning a quiet town into a shooting range. Frank Sinatra was said to have fired at streetlights, while Ava Gardner shattered a store window with a gunshot. Both had been drinking. Both were at the height of their fame. Then, through the power of Hollywood, the story nearly disappeared before the public could understand what had happened. When an ordinary person causes trouble, the police file a report and the court opens a case. When a star causes trouble, the phones in the studio offices begin to ring. Lawyers appear. Explanations are prepared. Reporters receive a cleaner version of events. Sometimes, by the next morning, the blood has been scrubbed from the carpet, but the fear of those who witnessed what happened remains. We will meet an actress who was dragged through a hotel lobby, a stage legend who nearly had to be summoned back from a bar before showtime, and a television star who earned hundreds of thousands of dollars per episode, but spent his final years struggling with devastating injuries. If you want me to explore more movies, television shows, or Hollywood secrets, leave a comment below. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel before joining me as we begin exploring the main story. Behind the glitter, the scars remain. Welcome to Hollywood Stars and Scars. Number 12. Frances Farmer. On October 19, 1942, Frances Farmer's downfall began with what appeared to be a minor traffic violation in Santa Monica. Her headlights were too bright during wartime blackout restrictions. She did not have a valid driver's license, and she was suspected of drinking. The star, known for her striking beauty, sharp intellect, and rebellious personality, spent the night in jail. The court fined her $500 and gave her a 180-day suspended sentence, but Frances paid only half of the fine before leaving for Mexico. By January 1943, the unpaid balance had led to an arrest warrant, just as another serious accusation emerged. A studio hairstylist claimed that Frances had struck her during the production of I Escaped from the Gestapo. Although the incident was later recounted in several different versions, the media immediately transformed Frances into the image of an uncontrollable star. Police found her at the Knickerbocker Hotel in Hollywood. Frances resisted, kicked, screamed, and was dragged through the lobby before horrified onlookers. In court, she threw an inkwell toward the judge and admitted that she had mixed alcohol into her milk, coffee, and orange juice. That confession revealed how drinking had entered even the most ordinary moments of her day, signaling a crisis that could no longer be dismissed. On January 21, 1943, Frances was transferred to the psychiatric ward of Los Angeles General Hospital. The heartbreaking reality was that the public was invited to watch her collapse as entertainment, while very few people asked whether she needed safety treatment or compassion. Frances Farmer cannot be explained by a single bottle of alcohol or one outburst of anger. Her story existed at the intersection of mental health, Hollywood pressure, media power, and dangerous decisions made during a crisis. She caused harm, but she was also a human being falling apart within a system that did not know how to treat those who could no longer follow its script with kindness. Number 11. Peter O'Toole. Peter O'Toole once captivated audiences with his blue eyes, refined voice, and explosive energy in Lawrence of Arabia. But before becoming a global icon, he had already earned a reputation at the Bristol Old Vic for disappearing into a pub shortly before performances. According to one story, the theater had to install a bell or telephone connection to a nearby pub so that he could be called back to the stage. The tale is often presented as an example of artistic eccentricity, but when an entire company must create a special procedure to control one person's drinking, it is no longer amusing. Fame did not make the chaotic nights disappear. It simply allowed more people to witness them. During his first appearance on American television with Johnny Carson, Peter was said to have broken a glass, used profanity, and walked off after only a few minutes. Michael Caine also recalled that after having dinner with him, Caine woke up in an unfamiliar apartment with almost no memory of the entire weekend. In Ireland, Peter was even said to have written a check to purchase a pub after being refused another drink. These stories may sound cinematic, but losing control and losing one's memory are not symbols of freedom. In 1976, Peter underwent surgery to remove most of his stomach and his entire pancreas. Under the cold lights of the hospital, the nights of excess that the press had once romanticized suddenly revealed their real consequences. His body had recorded everything that fame had tried to turn into legend. Peter survived and continued acting for many years afterward, but the ordeal became a brutal warning. Talent, charisma, and celebrity cannot protect a person from biological damage. A bottle does not care whether the person holding it is a legend. Number 10. Zsa Zsa Gabor. While Peter O'Toole turned the pub into a stage, Zsa Zsa Gabor transformed a traffic stop into an event watched across the country. On June 14, 1989, she was driving her Rolls-Royce Corniche, valued at approximately $215,000, through Beverly Hills, when police officer Paul Kramer pulled her over because the vehicle's registration had expired. The officer then discovered that her driver's license was no longer valid and that there was an open bottle of Jack Daniels inside the car. A series of seemingly minor violations quickly pushed the situation beyond control. While the officer was handling the matter, Zsa Zsa suddenly drove away, forcing Kramer to pursue and stop her a second time. At that point, she slapped him across the face. Zsa Zsa claimed that she had been treated roughly, while Kramer testified that the slap had come without warning. Although their accounts differed, an ordinary traffic stop had become an accusation of assaulting a police officer. In September 1989, she was convicted of assaulting an officer, driving without a valid license, and carrying an open alcoholic beverage in her vehicle. Zsa Zsa was sentenced to 3 days in jail, 120 hours of community service, a psychiatric evaluation, and nearly $13,000 in fines and restitution. In July 1990, she actually entered jail, proving that diamonds and fame could not make the cell door disappear. The incident did not erase her entire career, but it demonstrated that social status is not a license for reckless behavior. A single moment of anger transformed a traffic violation into an inseparable part of Zsa Zsa's legacy. The next story is even more disturbing because the consequences did not unfold only in front of the police, they also entered the man's own home. Number 9. Richard Harris. Richard Harris stepped onto the stage and screen with a powerful voice, blazing eyes, and an almost primal energy. Audiences saw a charismatic Irish artist, but those who drank with him told stories of vodka nights of disappearance and conflicts that could erupt from a single challenge. He once joked that he had only gone out to buy a bottle of milk and had somehow disappeared into an all-night drinking session. It may sound funny at first, but it was actually a sign of someone who had lost the ability to control himself. In London, New York, and Rome, Richard's name repeatedly became associated with bars and physical fights. According to some accounts, when intoxicated, he once ran into the street and punched moving cars. On another occasion, while trying to prove that he was not someone who constantly started fights, Richard took an American tourist outside and knocked him down after being challenged. However, the most troubling part of the story was not found in public incidents. His first wife, Elizabeth Reese Williams, described Richard becoming aggressive, destroying property, and forcing family members to live in fear. In 1981, a doctor warned Richard that he might have only 18 months to live if he continued drinking. For the first time, the consequence was no longer a fight, a night of lost memory, or a broken marriage, but the possibility of death. Richard chose to stop. That change did not erase the harm he had caused, but it showed that a person can still confront their behavior and choose another path. That may be the most memorable part of his story. Talent does not remove responsibility, but awareness can still create an opportunity for change before it is too late.
Number 8. Ava Gardner. From the intensity of Richard Harris, the story moves to Ava Gardner, whom Hollywood once celebrated as one of the most beautiful women in the world. Her striking appearance, deep voice, and defiant presence made her an icon who transcended her roles. After moving to Spain, Ava immersed herself in bullfighting, flamenco, and nightclubs that never seemed to sleep. But that freedom gradually slipped beyond its limits. According to some accounts, she often sat in the back seat of her private car and drank directly from a large container of gin, turning alcohol into a constant companion. Those nights of lost control quickly produced consequences. In Madrid, Ava was reportedly banned from the Ritz Hotel after an incident while intoxicated. The St. Regis Hotel in New York also reportedly refused to welcome her after a confrontation with the owner. Even more frightening was an incident in Havana where Ava met Fidel Castro and later became involved in an argument with Marita Lorenz. According to Lorenz, Ava followed her into an elevator and slapped her across the face, causing one of Castro's bodyguards to draw a gun. Within seconds, the glamour of a screen legend gave way to a potentially deadly situation. Ava Gardner died in London on January 25, 1990, at the age of 67. Her screen legacy remains brilliant, but her private life contained dark areas that fame cannot conceal. Ava was more than her chaotic nights. She was also intelligent, humorous, and full of life. However, compassion does not require us to deny the consequences. We can continue to appreciate her talent while acknowledging that alcohol sometimes led her to hurt others and place herself in extremely dangerous situations. Number 7. Lee Marvin.
While Ava Gardner's chaos was often covered by glamour, Hollywood built Lee Marvin into a symbol of toughness. His weathered face, prematurely silver hair, and gravelly voice made him the embodiment of a fearless man. But behind that appearance were wounds that were difficult to see. Lee had served in the military and, like many people of his generation, he lived during an era when psychological pain was often forced into silence instead of being acknowledged and treated. Stories about Lee in bars suggest that an ordinary evening could quickly become loud and unpredictable when he drank too much. Those around him were drawn to his presence, but also had to remain cautious of sudden changes in his mood. Alcohol may not have created Lee's internal wounds, but it could easily transform pain into anger and confidence into recklessness. Hollywood often called that instability courage and turned signs of emotional collapse into stories about a strong man. Lee Marvin died on August 29, 1987, at the age of 63. His performances remain powerful, but the life behind the screen raises questions about a generation of men who were praised for suffering in silence. Lee cannot be diagnosed solely from old stories, but it is possible to see that unaddressed pain often searches for a way out. Sometimes that path harms not only the person carrying the pain, but everyone standing nearby.
Number 6. Oliver Reed.
While Lee Marvin used toughness as armor, Oliver Reed built an entire legend around never knowing when to stop. His powerful face, booming voice, and unpredictable energy allowed him to dominate the screen, but away from the camera, his nights out often ended in violence or chaos. In 1964, following an argument at the Crazy Elephant nightclub in London, two men attacked him with broken bottles, leaving one side of his face in need of 63 stitches. The resulting scars later became one of his defining features, but behind them was a moment that nearly cost him his life.
The stories continued to follow Oliver. One night of drinking with Steve McQueen ended when Reed became so intoxicated that he vomited on his co-star. On television, his loss of control became even more public. After making controversial remarks about women on The Tonight Show, Shelley Winters poured whiskey over his head. Years later, during the program After Dark, Oliver appeared intoxicated and aggressively attempted to kiss writer Kate Millett. Such behavior cannot be excused by the image of a wild artist, because intoxication does not erase responsibility or transform the violation of another person's boundaries into entertainment.
By 1995, the chaos had begun to affect his career directly, when Oliver was fired from Cutthroat Island following alcohol-related problems and a physical altercation. On May 2, 1999, while filming Gladiator in Malta, he drank with a group of sailors, collapsed and died at the age of 61. His death is often presented as a fitting conclusion to the Oliver Reed legend, but behind the story was a human being, a family, and a film crew forced to confront a loss. When a chaotic lifestyle becomes a brand, even tragedy risks being turned into entertainment.
Number 5. Frank Sinatra. From Oliver Reed, the story moves to Frank Sinatra, the man who turned a glass of alcohol into an accessory of sophistication. With his perfect suits, mesmerizing voice, and confident manner, he helped define the image of the successful American man. But Barbara Sinatra wrote that gin could make Frank so cruel that she had to lock herself in her room. Outside the door was the singer adored by millions. Inside was a woman who felt she needed to create a barrier to protect herself. Fame cannot erase the fear experienced by those who live close to an icon.
In the fall of 1949, after a party in Palm Springs, Frank and Ava Gardner were said to have driven to Indio and fired guns at streetlights and a store window. Both were arrested, but the studio reportedly intervened to limit the scandal. Their nights of drinking continued to affect their work. During the production of From Here to Eternity, Sinatra and Montgomery Clift reportedly returned in the early morning after drinking heavily and then passed out. Burt Lancaster recalled that he often had to help Sinatra, Clift, and James Jones get to bed when they could no longer stand on their own. In 1967, after 2 nights of drinking and gambling at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, Sinatra destroyed property, damaged the switchboard system, and drove a luggage cart through a glass door. The confrontation with Carl Cohen that followed ended with Frank being struck so hard that his dental bridge was knocked out. Sinatra remains an extraordinary artist, but talent cannot remove responsibility for behavior that frightened others or placed them in danger. We can continue to love his music without allowing nostalgia to conceal the uncomfortable parts of the life of the man who created it.
Number 4. Spencer Tracy. Hollywood presented Spencer Tracy as a symbol of calmness, intelligence, and moral strength. 2 consecutive Academy Awards and a series of classic performances placed him among the most respected actors of his era. But before MGM perfected that image, Tracy had already become known within the New York theater community for nights of drinking fights and uncontrollable behavior. Although not every story is supported by complete documentation, the same pattern repeatedly appears. Alcohol led to disappearances, accidents, conflicts, and professional disruption. On one occasion, Tracy was arrested after crashing into a parked car, and MGM reportedly sent someone to handle the consequences. In 1934, during the production of Marie Galante, he disappeared from the set and was found almost unconscious in a hotel after approximately 2 weeks of continuous drinking. Fox fired him, sent him to a hospital, and sued him for delaying production. These incidents did not affect only one star. They forced hundreds of actors, technicians, and investors to carry the losses. After moving to MGM, the problem did not end. During the production of Riff Raff in 1936,
Tracy's condition reportedly delayed filming by approximately 10 days. Jean Harlow walked off the set and refused to continue until he was sober, establishing a boundary that the system usually avoided. Tracy eventually built a magnificent career, but his later success cannot erase the lost shooting days, the colleagues who were affected, or the people who quietly cleaned up the consequences. Saving a career does not mean that all the damage caused along the way disappears.
Number 03, Barbara Payton.
While Hollywood protected Spencer Tracy long enough for him to restore his reputation, the system abandoned Barbara Payton with brutal speed. Her blonde hair, sharp eyes, and dangerously alluring beauty once convinced Warner Brothers that she could become a major star. But in 1951, the relationship involving Barbara Franchot Tone and Tom Neal developed into a serious act of violence. After a fight, Tone was hospitalized with facial injuries. Barbara arrived at the hospital wearing a white fur coat and sunglasses and was reportedly carrying a martini, creating the perfect image for the sensational press while hiding the real pain behind it.
Barbara married Tone shortly afterward, but the marriage lasted only a few weeks before she returned to Neal.
The public followed her private life, as though it were a serialized drama, while her career steadily contracted, and problems involving alcohol, money, and the law began dominating the headlines. By the late 1950s, she had been repeatedly arrested on charges including writing bad checks, public intoxication, and disorderly conduct. By 1963, the name that had once appeared on movie posters surfaced in an arrest connected to prostitution on Sunset Boulevard.
In February 1967, Barbara was found unconscious near a trash container in a drugstore parking lot on the same boulevard that had once carried her toward auditions and premieres. 3 months later, on May 8th, she died at the age of 39. Barbara's story should not be reduced to a spectacle of decline or used as an opportunity to judge someone who is no longer alive. It was a tragedy formed by addiction, violence within relationships, and a media industry that profited from her instability until Hollywood could no longer see anything left to sell. Number 2, Richard Burton. Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor were once described by the press as Hollywood's greatest and most chaotic lovers. They had diamonds yachts, blockbuster films, and a magnetic attraction that the world could not stop watching. But behind the glamorous photographs were arguments, screaming, and broken objects in hotel rooms. The public called it passion, while employees had to enter and clean up shattered glass after the couple left. Violence does not become romantic simply because it occurs between two beautiful stars. Some behind-the-scenes accounts suggest that Elizabeth was once seriously injured during a physical confrontation, while the public was told that the cause had been a car accident. Although not every detail can be verified with absolute certainty, the story reflects how Hollywood often controlled information to protect its stars and profits. Burton possessed one of the most beautiful voices in the theater, but when he drank, he could become hot-tempered and lose control. That contrast demonstrates that extraordinary talent cannot protect a person from addiction or from the consequences of their own behavior. While filming The Klansman in 1974, Burton said that he was drinking approximately 2.5 to 3 bottles of vodka every day. Many scenes had to be arranged so that he could sit or lie down because he was unable to remain standing. After the film, he entered St. John's Health Center, and his first marriage to Elizabeth ended during the same year. Their story reminds us that screaming is not evidence of deep love. Destruction is not an expression of passion, and injuries should not be hidden behind a polished public statement. Great love does not have to be painful. Number 01, Jan Michael Vincent. The final star brings the story into the television era, with Jan Michael Vincent one of the most prominent action icons of the 1980s.
His blonde hair, athletic appearance, and cinematic face made him an idol through Airwolf, with a reported salary of approximately $200,000 per episode. On screen, Jan controlled a helicopter and confronted danger with calm precision. Away from the cameras, alcohol and drugs increasingly controlled his life, leading to arrests, physical fights, and legal problems involving driving while intoxicated. The distance between Jan's peak and his decline was brutally short. Major roles gradually disappeared, replaced by low-budget films and headlines about his private life. During the 1990s, he survived several serious car accidents. One accident fractured vertebrae in his neck, while emergency surgery damaged his vocal cords and left his voice permanently raspy. The hero, once paid an enormous salary to portray strength, now carried the physical consequences of moments when he had lost control. By 2012, health complications and an infection forced doctors to amputate Jan's right leg below the knee. The image created a heartbreaking contrast with the Airwolf posters, in which he had once stood beside a machine capable of overcoming every obstacle. Jan-Michael Vincent's story is not merely about an idol who lost his career. It is also a warning that money and fame cannot replace support when addiction appears. They cannot buy back an old voice, an undamaged vertebra, or a part of the body that has been lost. Looking back at all these stories, I do not see a group of people who were simply notorious drunks. I see extraordinarily talented individuals, many of whom carried deep wounds while living within a system that often rewarded reckless behavior until it became too expensive. I also see the unnamed victims' spouses who locked their doors, hotel employees who cleaned up broken glass, colleagues forced to wait on film sets, and strangers pulled into anger that did not belong to them. Compassion does not require us to erase responsibility. A person can suffer from addiction and still remain accountable for violence, dangerous driving, or violating another person. At the same time, accountability does not mean that we should mock illness or transform a collapse into entertainment. Both things can be true. They needed help, and the people they harmed also deserve acknowledgement. That is a more mature perspective than any sensational headline. Classic Hollywood created beautiful images, but sometimes that beauty functioned as a curtain. The suits, luxury cars, perfect voices, and premier lights made the public forget that underneath them were still human bodies with clear limitations. No one has a liver made of steel. No one is immune to accidents. No one is too famous to escape every consequence. When we view icons honestly, they do not become less interesting. They become more real. So much talent, love, and opportunity was consumed inside rooms where everyone knew there was a problem, but no one was strong enough to make it stop. Some people changed. Some never received another chance. Others had to spend the rest of their lives living with the consequences of a star's behavior, while the public continued to celebrate that star. Tell me which person made you think the most, and which story shocked you the most. If you appreciate investigations that look directly into the darkness, while still preserving respect for the people involved, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Comment with the name of the movie, television show, or Hollywood secret that you would like me to explore next. Thank you for staying with me until the very end.